So we want to welcome you to 836. What will be interesting about this is that those of you who are in my class, I have never had you guys before, and those of you in Dr. Sutton's class basically have worked with her before from 801, if you remember when we did the combinations. And we're going to do the combinations again because I'm mentoring her through the 836 course. So you guys will get to see me again. So, whether that's good or bad, who knows? So, Dawn, why don't you just introduce yourself to to the group and who you are and some of your background.
Okay, that question is so too deep. Who am I? I am an educator who wanted to be a teacher since she was in first grade, never changed her mind. I got my bachelor's in regular education. There were no jobs the year I got out, so I taught for 3 years at a Hebrew day school. I learned all the brachas. They said it was okay because I looked Jewish, so I was their token Christian. And then I had my children, and when I went back, while I was home and teaching at the Hebrew day school, I got my first master's in special education. When I went back to teaching, I never taught regular ed again. I always taught special ed. I have a lot of years in probably every level of special education except for the physically handicapped. I've had learning support, life skills support, emotional support, partial hospitalization. I'm working now with high school students in a private school that have been kicked out of the regular school for one reason or another. I teach all of them math, so I shouldn't say I never taught regular ed again. I do teach them algebra too. But I also take care of those that have IEPs. So I do the special ed side of it too. I got my undergrad at Wilkes before it was a university. Marywood was my special ed master's degree. Misericordia University was my instructional technology degree. Then I went back to Wilkes for my doctorate. And besides leadership, my concentration for my doctorate was, again, instructional technology. And I did my dissertation in how emotional behavior disorder students react to using virtual reality. It was a hot topic, still a hot topic at the time. You see more and more gamification articles popping up all over the place. I worked with an online school in British Columbia, Canada, to do my dissertation. I thoroughly enjoyed interviewing and working with the students with whom I worked. I've been teaching classes at Drexel since 2003, John?
2007.
7? Yeah. I was teaching master's level courses. And I remember Alan Grant said, as soon as you get that diploma, he said, give me your resume again, and they'll put me in the doctoral program. So that's how I kind of made a full circle.
And what will be good about, those of you who have her for your learning facilitator is the fact that her study was totally qualitative. is a phenomenological study. So she has a pretty good background in terms of what this research process is. And so what I think is important for all of you to know, now we're starting to move into, you know, the research environment of your training, and what we will be looking at for you is to kind of give you I'm going to call an overview to qualitative research, but we will take you into some deeper levels of this, and you're going to do a mini type of study. I believe most of you in 803 and 810 did a chapter 1, 2, and 3. Is that basically correct? Or played around with a 1, 2, and 3? How to design those?
Hi, I'm Elsie. Cohort 6, we currently have 803, and we don't have 10 until the fall. We have 810 in the fall, and then we're currently doing 803. Yes.
That's interesting. So they have you doing this course before the introductory course, which is fine. I don't see a problem with it. Okay. All right. Who do you have right now for 803?
We have Dr. Moritz.
Well, you're really in trouble. So anyway, no, that's good. He will help you greatly. So I think the courses will, you know, interact well. But what you're going to do is, and I'll talk to Ken about this a little bit, so that he knows that you're going to be doing interviewing, actually going out and doing a sort of a mini study focused on interviewing. And what I'm going to make the assumption that all of you did the interviewing in either 625 or it was 625 then, but it's now 845 when you did Theory U. So we're going to use that tool again as you use that as a framework. So I think that's kind of important to think about. And what we'll do tonight, basically this is just give you a quick overview of what the course is. Then at a particular point, I'm going to ask those students who are in my section, that's the blended section that will be meeting Friday night, you will not need to stay after the quick introduction, because a lot of what we'll be talking about, you know, for a brief overview of the content, we're going to be covering Friday night. So you don't need to stay. If you want to, you can, which is okay, because then you can see whether or not I'm telling the same story on both nights. So that's a good way of looking at it.
That's actually a good tool that I never thought of.
Yeah, see, so there. So everyone has the books. There are the 3 books that you should have. The primary one is the John Cresswell book. And if you went through the syllabus at all, you have seen you have a lot of reading in Cresswell. You have reading in Merriam's book. And that is an excellent book. Those 2 books really dovetail together. And the coding manual, Johnny Saldana's book, is an excellent book that you will use throughout your development of your dissertation if you do a pure qualitative, or not pure qualitative, but pure quantitative, if you don't do quantitative, but use qualitative or a mixed method approach. That book is extremely important for you to understand what coding is all about. So we're going to make sure that you understand what coding is in this course. That's the primary focus, to get you to understand what qualitative studies are about, and then what the process of doing interviewing and collecting data is. So did anyone have any problems getting the books? So if you did, you know, let us know. Otherwise, these are your books for the course. And so what we want to do is just go through the assignments really quick, so that you know exactly what these are. And as you think about them, and as you think about getting into the assignments and any questions that begin to emerge, you know, at any time, contact either one of us. So I think that is very important, that you understand what they are. But they're designed not to have you do busy work. They're designed to get you to kind of do a dive into it and understand what's going on. And if those of you in Dr. Sutton's class will notice that you have teams that you're going to be working in, and we kept your teams the same as they were in 801. Since you guys knew each other in those teams, I thought that would work out better for you to collaborate with each other. And then those of you who are in my class, we will create the teams Friday night, because I don't know if you guys have worked in teams in the past, if you already have established teams, which I'd rather you work in because you know each other. That's the way we'll do that. So hopefully that makes sense to you. So the first thing that both classes will be dealing with, what we call reflective conversations. Those of you who've had me in the past know what they are. We want you to meet weekly, your team to meet weekly to discuss what you're reading, what you're seeing in the course, types of questions that emerge, so that when we do the virtual sessions, and we'll do virtual sessions every week, they're not mandatory for you to come into. They will be Monday evenings, 6:30. We will be available. We'll give out information, expand a little bit on what you're learning, and they will be there. What we're probably going to use is not Zoom. We're going to use this new framework that we're testing out called Shindig, which is a different type of virtual meeting space. So you'll see some information about that in the near future. What we also want you to do is to keep a journal. And if you know from 625 or 845, the Theory U material, your ability to keep a journal about what are you finding out about yourself as an individual is a very, very good practice, particularly in qualitative research, because one of the things that if you're doing observations in the field, your ability to do a journal becomes very important. Now, these are your journals. All we're asking you is at the end of week 5 is maybe give a one-page update to maybe some of the salient points that you're learning about yourself in the journals, and also at the end of week 10. Just one page. We're not checking these journals. We're working off the assumption as doctoral students that you will use them. It will help you to understand how to get deeper into your own thinking. So that is what is there for you. But we do want your teams to meet as often as possible, hopefully once a week, to just go over what you're reading, what you're learning, so you become the study team. Okay? So the second one now is the researcher stance. What this will be about is, with Dr. Sutton's class, we will cover that in a little bit more detail tonight, and Friday night, you'll be doing that in my class. So those of you in my class will get into the researcher stance, which is a one-page document, if you already downloaded it, that what will help you to begin to identify, who you are as a researcher. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but also it will serve as a good baseline for you to understand who each of you are within your teams and what you're thinking about qualitative research is. So the chances are you're all not going to have the same stance, which will help to nurture your discussion within your reflective conversations. Okay, so that's the first one. And the other one, this will be towards the end of the course. This is called Turning the Story. And you'll see this in John Cresswell's book. What you're going to do is you're going to create over the next 2 weeks sort of a mini study, and you're going to define what your research question is in this study. And we'll talk about this in more detail next week and then Friday night. But what will happen is, for you to truly understand what the 5 approaches to qualitative research is about, is that you will then rewrite your question in, let's say, I'm doing a case study. That's what you want to do. So you're going to use case study for your initial project here. Then what you're going to do is you're going to then change that research question to reflect the other 4 types of research in qualitative approaches. And what will happen is that will allow us to give you feedback on whether or not you really understand the basics of the different methodologies in that. Now, it might sound more daunting right now, but it's really not that difficult. It's just understanding how the different methodologies changes your research question. So that will be one of your assignments, and I believe that's around the 7th or 8th week of the course. Then this is the main activity starting this process. And if you looked at the syllabus, you saw the design stages. So the first thing you're going to do, step 1, is you're going to do a data inventory and a project description. So you're going to think about the types of things. Obviously, some of you can't think back to 803, 810. But what you're going to start doing is you're going to think about a problem that you think you might want to investigate. And on a 2-page document, you're just going to talk about, okay, this is what I want to do. Here's what I'm thinking my approach is going to be, etc. What that will give us is a baseline to help you to begin to organize a qualitative study. So again, it's not as big as you think it is. You know, it's a 2-pager. It just gets you into the framework of organizing the information. Okay. Then after you get feedback from us on that, then what you're going to do is you're going to go out then in stage 2 is you're going to go out, do an interview, collect interviews, and then you're going to transcribe your interview. And what you're going to do is you're going to transcribe it in a way that then you're able to use coding as a process to determine what type of themes and what type of data might emerge out of this. So that will be your stage 2, the transcription of a draft, because one of the most important things in a qualitative research study is that, remember, you are part of the research as a researcher because you're working in the field, you're collecting the field, the data from the field, so your ability to begin to understand how you bracket. And if you remember in the Otto Scharmer interviewing process, the most important thing during that interview process was to turn off that voice in your head so you could hear what the other person was saying. So in the parlance of qualitative research, that's called bracketing. It's where you set aside any assumptions that you have about the information that you're hearing so that you can block that in order to be able to truly get to the essence of what that person is saying. So that's what you'll be doing in terms of stage 2. Then stage 3, and again, when you look at your syllabus, you'll see all of these are timelined out. Then you're going to do the coding. Once you do your transcriptions, you'll code it. And what we're going to have you do is also to do a graphical representation of the material and the themes that you put together. Because in qualitative studies, that's extremely important, being able to organize that data graphically so that the reader can get a pretty good snapshot of what you're saying. So that'll be the third part of the collection of your data. And then the fourth stage then basically will be where you're going to create a short academic paper on what you found, what the implications were from that data that you collected. That's where I'm going to talk to Dr. Moritz about that so that there's some congruency between your class and this class and his, because I don't want you to get confused about what's going on. So that, I think, will be important. So I'll double check, and find out what's happening here. So that's your assignments of what you have. Do you have any initial questions for either one of us about the assignments at this particular point? Obviously, we're hitting a lot with you, but just, anything just popping into your mind right now?
Dr. Gould, this is Justin. Just a couple quick things. We have Dr. Flowers
Okay.
for 803. So just so you have a heads up, I guess
Okay, good.
he's new. He was just hired or something.
Okay.
Alonzo Flowers. And then
Right.
as far as the interview goes, is there a time frame? Like, are we looking at do we want to do a real long one? Does it, you know what I mean? Are we trying to keep?
We want about a 20-minute interview, because if you remember what you did in the Otto Scharmer one, using that, depending on how long and how deep you got into the conversation, all I want you to be able to do is you can do a couple things. You can do an interview, maybe an interview of one individual, maybe do a focus group of 2 or 3 people, and then maybe do observation. It depends. That's why that first go around of assignment 1 is important to us, to give us a sense of what the structure of your study is, and then we'll talk about what you should do. But you're not doing a full-blown study. The tops would be as a half-hour tops. That's a lot of transcription.
No, I think what you're telling him is it's not a full-blown research or interview that he's doing like he would do for his dissertation. It's just going to be a mini one. And I think what Dr. Gould was saying, what's most important and what will steer you into how you're doing things is going to be that beginning part when you decide what question you are going to delve into. I remember that was my beginning, and it was not purposely for my dissertation. It was before I took my comprehensive exams. Because I was in instructional technology, I had to research and look up all the latest, greatest, what's going on in instructional technology. And basically virtual reality hit me in the face. And that's when Dr. Gould says that this is a lot thrown at you. These are a lot of steps that are actually going to help you.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And as I said, we're giving you just the full-blown structure right now, but we're going to guide you through the process. So don't worry about that. My only concern is because I find it's interesting, is that they got you taking this course, which is fine in relationship to the introductory courses. And I want to make sure there's some congruency there. So I will talk to those 2 professors about that to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, just I guess to follow up then, because I noticed that I talked to Amber before she left, because I noticed that they switched the course, and I'm not sure why. They just said they decided to switch them because it was supposed to be 837, I believe.
Yeah, which is quantitative. Yeah.
And then they put 836 in here, they moved something and moved this one in.
Yeah.
And she just said, we decided to move it. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know who made the ultimate decision, but just so you have a heads up.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. And I'll take a look at that. And actually, I'm going to talk to Dr. Hamrick tomorrow about that, just so I understand it. Because I didn't know it, because I made the assumption that you guys already had 803 and 810, which is normal. But that's fine. It's not going to, actually it'll give you a leg up in terms of what you're doing, in particularly in 810.
And it'll actually be better. You're just focusing on qualitative now. You don't have anybody, you're not following up or at the same time taking quantitative, which would be confusing.
Yeah, and I don't want you to get caught up in something because we're saying certain things and then they say other things and you're there like, huh? So we want to make sure, and I'll double check on that. So basically that final paper, which is about 8 pages long, I forget what it is in the syllabus, but there's your structure. And basically, that's the structure you're going to be using, throughout the development of your understanding of putting together your dissertation. So this is a basic one. It's, you're going to talk about, what the title is, do a little short abstract about it. You're going to talk about an introduction to what the problem is that you're trying to research with this. You're going to talk about your method. So it will be 4 of the method. There's one method in the qualitative that you're not going to use, and that is ethnography, because you don't have enough time to do an ethnography. But it will be one of the other ones. So you'll talk about that. Then you'll talk about, what your findings were, basically the codes that came out of this, what were the themes that emerged from it, which are your results, and then you're going to make some quick conclusions and recommendations towards that question that you posed. That's all it is. And again, as I said, we're gonna guide you through the process. This is not, I got to get this so perfect. No, because it's going to help you to begin to understand the design or the structure. So go back to 800 again, think about the iceberg, and we're talking about the structure. So if you look at the event level as, okay, this is the problem I'm trying to look at, then you go underneath it, then you begin to talk about, okay, what's the data I need to support that? Then what's the structure and methodology I'm going to collect this? And then what's my rationale, which would be the mental models. So think about it from that point of view. So this is what we have set up for you. And again, we're going to help. Our job is to help you through this, all right? And that's why I want you to work, we both have you working in study teams so that you help each other. And those of you who had me in the past know that those teams generally work fairly well. And particularly since, the one group has worked together quite a bit, and then I'll find out Friday night with my group, what you guys have done in the past. So we'll get all that worked out. All right? Any other things about these assignments at this particular point?
Yeah, John, this is Andy. I had a quick question.
Yes.
So is it right then that I know, because I saw from the chat box, it was confirmed, our groups that we were in for 801 with you, in this class, they're used really for the weekly reflective conversations, and that's the only part. Everything else is really individual work in terms of the design.
Right. Yeah, well, what's interesting about it is, so think about it this way. Yeah, it is individual work, but your team's going to help you, because that's why you're working in the teams.
Sure.
So you'll share, but it's individual work.
I think I'm good, yep.
Yeah.
You'll
All right.
all come up with different questions or ideas that you want to delve deeper into.
So remember, yeah, and that's a good point, because what we want you, I want to try to stay consistent. Those of you who have not had me before know this will be new to you, and I'm not sure who you've had before. We'll talk about that Friday night. But you guys know that the sense is all we're trying to do is create that learning space that you're both learner and teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that seems to work out well. You guys have exhibit that, obviously. So that's basically the structure of the course. And so what if there's no other questions at this particular point, and as I said, Friday night we'll be meeting. I don't know where the room is yet. They haven't told me. I don't know if they've told you, but as soon as I find out, I'll email all my guys the room number and where it is, because I don't know.
As long as you're not out on a windowsill or something.
Right, that's true. Who knows? So those are the you who are in my class. If you so desire, you can leave now. And then what we're going to do is just continue, giving the quick overview to the other class. And you're welcome to stay. If not, you may leave. Okay?
Dr. G, this is Lawrence Camacho.
Yes, how are you?
I got you on Friday, but don't forget to please send me the link to the Zoom, because I'm away. And I won't be there physically on Friday, but I will.
Well, if you want to stay on now,
Yeah, why don't you stay
on now, then you don't have to worry about Friday night.
Right.
Okay, well, that'll work too.
Okay.
Then you won't be missing anything.
Right.
Okay, you checking your group chat too, Dr. Gould?
Am I checking let me put my glasses on so I can see my group chat.
That would be a good
It would be a very good thing. Let me see. Where's my chat stuff?
That was what Dr. Gould looked like when he was growing up.
Right here? Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think that is true.
You kind of figured.
Thanks. We're not trying to encourage anybody to.
Hey, be happy. You got 10 fingers.
That's true too. So let me take a look at my chat room. So John, I just registered for a course earlier today. Okay. Yeah, you are. I did not receive. Okay.
Just read the red.
Read the red.
The red word.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good. Well, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
You'll get everything.
Okay.
Okay, it's yours right now.
Just checking. Just trying to keep you on track.
That's very difficult to do.
Okay. All right.
Let me move the slide.
We're going to talk now just briefly about what qualitative research is. When I'm doing this and going over things that we're going to talk about, I think naturally, I think back to myself and how I went through courses like this and how I had no freaking idea what I was going to do in the beginning. And the one thing that got me on the road, on the track to doing what I did was the comprehensive exams, and I was told to study and read anything and everything about the newest, latest thing that was going on in instructional technology. So something put me on that track. You can find any track that interests you. And it could be Alzheimer's. It could be gamification that I mentioned earlier, which is an interest of mine in following through to continue to write about. Find yourself a track. And after you've had quantitative and qualitative research, then you decide sort of which room you want to go to, and your track is going to fit in the best. And what we have when we have qualitative research are just basically what you see here. How, why, and what. How do they think about a phenomenon? Why does a certain people do something in a certain way, and what does the daily life of that group of people look like? So that's what qualitative is. It's just a basic how, why, and what. All right, these characteristics come right from the Creswell book. Takes place in natural settings. You are the key instrument of data collection, not your pencil, not a tape recorder. You and the questions that you ask and how you hear them and interpret them and put them down on paper. So you are the instrument of data collection. Use multiple methods of data collection and multiple sources of data, but you're the filter through which all of this data goes. You build patterns and categories from the bottom up. I used to have a professor, and what she did as she was trying to lump things together and make sense of the readings she was doing, she got different colored sticky notes. And she had them all over the wall, the yellow ones, the blue ones, the green ones, the orange ones. Oh no, that didn't fit in there, that fits on a green one. And she would change the color of the sticky note. And she built her categories on her wall by using colors. You could do the same thing on the computer if you wanted to, using color.
Yeah, and that's basically, that one's important because that's the basic process of coding.
Yes.
Okay?
That's how
coding's all about.
she coded. And when I was coding, it was through the interviews that I did with them, it was the commonalities of answers to my questions. I had a certain amount of questions for each interview for these, I say my kids, but they're in British Columbia, Canada. I had a certain number of questions, and I recorded the answers that they gave me. And I was getting similar answers again and again and again. Okay, there's one lump. And then to another question, similar answers were lumping together. And there's another group. And that's how I was coding, based on the responses that I got from my students. And those are the patterns that you build, whether you do it in sticky notes or you do it in responses that you receive. You focus on the learning participants' meaning and understanding.
Yeah, that one's very important because that is a major distinction between quantitative. Because quantitative, what you're trying to do is as a researcher, is to keep you out of the research, so to speak, to control for variables, to control for different things that happen. Whereas in qualitative, what really begins to take place is that you're part of the environment.
You are part of the group. Yeah, you are part of your study. You're not you're not out there just collecting data and running it through in vivo. You are part of your study, like Dr. Gould said. Okay. Did you turn it?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, gosh. You didn't change the border. You freaked me out.
I know. I'm normally will change the border.
He usually freaks me out because he changed. The very first thing I learned in doing multimedia was you never change the background. And so I've always brought this up, and my God, he didn't change the background. Okay, there's some common characteristics of qualitative research, again, continued. The process is emergent. Your questions and data evolve. They grow as your study grows. As my relationship grew with the students with whom I worked, so did my understanding of them. And my understanding of their answers to my questions. Qualitative researchers develop a holistic account of the problem being studied. We're looking at it from all angles. I'm looking at it from the students I interviewed angle. I had a parent there with each student because one student was non-communicative and he could spell, and he went to a place in Philadelphia that I wish I had known when my autistic nephew were younger. He could spell very well, and his mother sat right with him. He was a 7th grader, and he spelled out what he wanted her to relay to me. So it's holistic. I mean, like I said, I got involved with the students. I got involved with the relationship of the parents with the students, of the parents with the virtual reality program, of the students and of the parents in my relationship.
Yeah, and that second bullet point there, I think, is important because when we get into, when you do that first little project called the researcher stance, if you notice what it says there, it says researcher positions themselves. So you will see that either, you know, you're a ontologist, you're epistemological, etc. These philosophical points of view are extremely important to understand about yourself and how you see the world in terms of understanding qualitative research, because the more you understand, and think about it from Sharma's idea of the source of leadership, well, what this does is finding out what is your source as a researcher. And you'll see in a couple of minutes what that is. That's very important, really, to understand.
And how you believe you affect your study.
So what's going to happen now is in chapter 2 in Cresswell, this is a very important chapter for you guys to start looking at right now, because these are the philosophical assumptions and the interpretive frameworks that you need to tease out once you read through this. Now, we're going to take you through this real briefly so that you're aware of it as you get into that chapter. So as Cresswell points out, these are the key questions that you're dealing with when it looks at the philosophy, the theoretical framework that you want this research to fit into. Why is it important to understand the philosophical assumptions? These are things you need to understand as a qualitative researcher. You need to know what the 4 philosophical assumptions are. We'll look at those in a couple minutes. And how are they used and how they're written into a philosophical study. Qualitative research has a lot to do with philosophy. It has a lot to do with your perception. So go back to Sharma. He talks about downloading a position. What you're going to do here from that point of view is understand what your philosophical position is, because that's going to become very important as you choose your methodology down the road. So these questions are important. So as he continues, he talks about the role of the assumptions and the paradigms and worldview. Your worldview is very important. So when researchers undertake qualitative study, you're basically agreeing to a particular type of assumption about this. And again, when you read through this and you look at your stance, you're going to take a stab at trying to understand what your philosophical point of view of the world is. You'll see that in a couple minutes, what they are. Then after choosing a qualitative research, then you bring your own worldview into it, because that shapes the direction of the study. So for example, right now, I've had some students who were looking at the way in which coaching takes place within a school district, and their worldview was basically a constructivist, postmodern point of view. So as you understand that more as we get into this, that influences the way in which they look at the study or the problem they're going to look at. Right now, obviously, because of Orlando, with all of the attention on gays and lesbian, transgender, well, there's a whole field of study in the philosophical assumptions that allow you to take a worldview of looking at that. So I had a student do her dissertation on understanding the nature of those kids in high school in order to do appropriate counseling to help them to negotiate the rest of the world. That's a worldview that she had. So these are types of things that you're going to look at. And then finally, that interpretive lens becomes very important, because as the researcher, you want to advocate for a correction, particularly to marginalized, underrepresented groups or to societal problems. So again, when you look at Dr. Sutton's study, it was dealing with a group of kids that were really underserved within their school districts, and they literally had to get out of there and function in a different world so they could find out who they were as learners. So that influenced the way in which you develop that study. These points of view become extremely important. So here's the assumptions. And again, I'm going to go through these real quickly, but you read about them. So if you're really concerned about the nature of the reality of what you're working in and what you're looking at, whether it be leadership or whether it be creativity or whether it be a problem with busing or whether it be something in higher education or in the business world, you're taking an ontological point of view, because ontology looks at the nature of reality. But as a researcher, if you want to know what they know, how do they understand this? Where does this come from? That's where does the knowledge, how does one generate knowledge? That's an epistemological point of view. And again, if you guys remember with me, if you had me for Otto Scharmer's stuff, there was a whole series where Scharmer talked about how these influence learning and the points of view of learning. And if I remember, I will give you those pages again just to look at that, because he put a pretty good schematic together for you to see what the, particularly ontology and epistemology, are related to learning. Then if the role of values, so if you really want to look at what people's values are related to your research, then the philosophical assumption comes from axiology. So that becomes important. If you're interested in the language of the research, what's being used, how people interact, how they talk, that's rhetorical. And then finally, the methods. If you're trying to research different types of methods, then you're looking at methodology. So again, philosophical assumptions, ontology. The question is, what's the nature of reality? Reality is multiple, as seen through many different points of view. So if you want to study the differences between political thought during this election, coming from an independent, a Democrat, or a Republican, that might be the type of research question that you might want to look at. And then the implications for practice is that the researcher then reports different perspectives as themes develop in the findings. And that's where the coding comes in, the development of themes. So that's what ontological does. The next one is epistemological. So what counts as knowledge? You know, how do we understand? How are knowledge claims justified? If you remember some of the comments that we would give back to you, and how do you use the literature research? How do you justify a claim that one makes? What's the knowledge base for that? What is the relationship between the researcher and that being researched? So that's the type of question epistemological answers. And then the characteristics, then, you attempt to lessen the distance between themselves and what is being researched and subjective evidence. And what you're going to find out is, particularly epistemological research has a lot to do with phenomenological research, and we'll study that this quarter. And then for practice, then the researcher really collaborates and spends time in the field, so you get to understand people. You interview them, you observe them, you do focus groups, you actually become an insider and rely on quotes from participants as evidence. So you find that in phenomenology, you find that sometimes in narrative approaches, and you definitely find it in the one that you're not going to do, ethnographies. Don, this one's yours.
Okay. We have the philosophical assumption of axiology, and what is the role of values? Something you could look at if you were studying the horrific event that happened in Orlando. What are the roles of the values of the different people that were involved on both sides of the terrible story? Characteristics, researchers acknowledge that research is value-laden and biases are present. They're going to be present in you as you are asking your questions and interviewing your subjects, and biases are present in the people whom you're interviewing. Implications for practice. Researchers openly discuss values that shape the narrative and guide their own interpretation in conjunction with the interpretation of the participants. So you are going to openly bring out that discussion of values if that's the one that you choose, and then you are going to bring them back together along with the values that you discovered from the people whom you were interviewing.
Sorry, I'm playing games right now because
You know, you really are.
everything is clicking on
trying
me.
to read
There
what's
you go.
there and believing me.
All right. So there's your next one. There we go. I think I'm on track now.
I don't know. What day is it?
You're right.
Okay. Questions. What's the process of research? What's the language of research? That's the methodological. The characteristics, the researcher uses inductive logic. They induce the logic in their studies within the topic, within the context, and the implications for practice. The researcher works with the particulars, the details, prepares generalizations, groups things together, describes in detail the context of the study, and continually revises the questions and experiences from the field. Every time I did an interview, I would revise the questions that I asked the next time I used them. Nothing was set in stone. If something with the particular students I was dealing with, if something wasn't flowing well, then I needed to change my game. And the same thing goes if you're taking the philosophical assumption of the methodological.
Yeah, and what's important about that, and what you just said, I think is very important for you to think about, is that many times the types of questions you're going to ask are open-ended. So again, go back to Sharma when you did those interviews, and a lot of you said, boy, they were really difficult to do because you had your own mindset about what I want to do, so you didn't bracket enough to listen to what the person was saying. And then as you listen to them, that guides the openness of where they take you to the next question.
Exactly.
A lot of those.
Question one with open ears and brackets up there where they need to be. Question two evolves from question one.
Right.
You can't sit there and, okay, ahead of time, I got it ready. I'm going to have 6 questions ready for these people. Boom, 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 boom. Doesn't work that way.
Now, there's certain times you do that, but right now, I want you to get into the sense of the openness that happens because of these philosophical points of view. And that what happens then is the interpretive frameworks in which you will, as it states here, the definition of a paradigm, obviously, is a set of beliefs, or, it's a downloading. It's the stuff you carry in your head. It's the mental models that are there. Well, when you're a researcher, and this is why this stance becomes important for you to tease out, what happens then is these are the major research paradigms that you find in qualitative studies. Postpositivism, social constructivism, transformational frameworks, and pragmatism. And so what I'm going to do now, we're not going to go through each one of these slides, but these are in chapter 2, I think we said in the syllabus, these, we want you to look at these, study these, take a look at them. This one, here's the next one, it's continuation. So I
just have to say,
yeah, go ahead.
Marinate in them.
Yeah, definitely, because this is going to help you to find your stance.
Right.
Because if you look at, let me go back on this one. So what happens is when you look at this chart, there's the interpretive frameworks. So you see post-positivism right going down. Then there's those philosophical belief structures. What they show you then is what each one of these means to the researcher. So what you need to do is to go through these sort of like you did in the 10 phases of innovation. You try to organize
and find yourself.
Yeah, find yourself in this. So whoops, I keep pushing the wrong button here. Hang on a second. So what you're going to do is in each one of these, so there's that set. Here's the next set again. Pragmatism. Then there's critical race, feminism, queer, and disability. They are all frameworks. They'll talk to you about what they are, but again, then go across those philosophical beliefs and see, okay, wow, yeah, this is kind of where I am right now.
Right,
Yeah.
because that's how, with the question that you develop, this is how you're going to find out from what point of view you're coming.
Yep, it's very important. So what will happen then is, in the way in which we're going to then give you feedback, no, we already talked, these are the 5 qualitative ones that we talked about. So we'll get into those next week a little bit more. I already mentioned them: narrative, phenomenology, grounded theory, case study, ethnography. You're not going to do an ethnography because you don't have enough time, we said. But the
Right,
other 4 are the ones that you're going to do.
Mhm.
All right, we'll spend time on those. The 5 approaches, so you begin to think about these. So as you look at narrative phenomenology, again, this is all on that chapter. Here's what the focus is. So if your focus is on understanding the essence of the experience around a phenomenon, no matter what it might be, that's a phenomenological study. If your focus is you're kind of interested in developing a theory from the data that you collect, that's what grounded theory is all about. If you really want to explore the life of, let's say, you really want to understand what homelessness is, you go out and interview and get a homeless person to actually tell what it is to be that way. That's what a narrative study is. So again, look at the focus, then look at the design, what it's best for. So narrative is good for telling a story about an individual's experience.
Right.
Phenomenology, describing the essence of a lived phenomenon. All right? So that helps you to look at what these are. This will help you to look at it. Now, the disciplinary background of where a lot of these come from, so narrative used in anthropology, literature, history, etc. You can read these yourselves. So this tells you where a lot of the essence of where these come from. If you notice, phenomenology has a lot to do in education, but also case study has a lot to do in education. You also can use it in any of these. But again, Cresswell will help you to look at these. And as you look at it as individuals, these are the things we want you to talk about in your team. You know, say, oh, well, yeah, I kind of find this. Da, 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 da. And then what will happen is, as you go through all of these approaches, here's how you collect the data, here's the type of analysis. And again, we're giving you a big overview right now. We'll go into these more detail. But look at the bottom, the narrative or the report. So what happens in a narrative, your report really is you tell the story of a person. And if you like to write well and you like to tell rich stories, that's what you do. The written report in phenomenology is you really discuss what the essence of that experience is with the phenomenon.
Right.
So you go right on across each one of those. And then again, there's the general structure. Again, I like how he does this for you. He gives you a pretty good framework for helping you to find your lens, who you are. That's why I said to you, these tables in chapter 2 are very important. And then finally, here's what you're going to create for us. You're basically going to look at your stance. You're going to say, okay, here is my philosophical approach. Here is my worldview, the lens I'm using. Here's the type of interpretive community that I'm looking at, that I want to work in. And then I'm going to look at the qualitative approach that maybe this is probably, I'm more interested in case study, maybe. That's all you do. This is not a major task. It's just to get you to put down some ideas of what you believe your stance is at this particular point, and then we're going to give you a lot of feedback on that.
And then you're going to categorize those things that you've come up with.
Yep.
And it's not to say that that's what you're going to stick with from here to the end. It's not. This is just a little mini exhibit of how you can define yourself in terms of those charts that Cresswell has, find your lens, see what your philosophical stance is, and then come up with something that would be a good study with a good question that you could take forward from there.
So this will drive your assignments, those stages of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, we're going to give you a lot of guidance on how to do this, as we go along. Okay? So let me just put it this way. Got any questions?
Mhm.
Or you're so mesmerized. But I'm serious. Don't worry. You'll do fine. We'll take you through this process. And again, think back to 800. Think back to Theory U and how that actually those tools are going to help you to do this.
It actually might not be a bad idea to have a Zoom meeting on each quarter of that chart up
We'll
there.
do that. As you get into this, next Monday night, we're going to have one again. It might be in Shindig, and we'll do that. We'll say, okay, where are you guys with this?
Let's break it down, and let's get different opinions from different people. Where are they with their qualitative approach? Where are they with their physical stance? And the different members of the teams will see where the other members are.
Okay? So that's basically it. Just wanted to get you, but I don't, and I'm serious about this, don't get, like, holy crap, this is so big and no, you'll get there. Don't worry about that. We'll get you there. You'll look at it. Now, unless you're a mathematician and you're pure quantitative, well, yeah, you might look at this and say, oh man, this is, yeah, right. But you still got to learn it. You still have to understand it, because you're going to do, when you do your literature reviews and you start getting into those, you're going to have to draw from both qualitative and quantitative research. And you're going to have to understand the structure of that literature in order to say, yeah, this makes sense. I'm going to utilize this in my literature review, because that'll be very important in your chapter 2. But you'll get a lot of that in 803 and 810. So, yeah, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to say was my first thought before starting my dissertation was I wanted to, I was thinking about virtual reality, and then I'm thinking about do their reading scores improve if they're using virtual reality? How about their writing scores or time on task or whatever I chose to do? Now, right there in whatever part of my brain was going on, I'm thinking quantitatively. And then I stepped back a little bit and I thought to myself, wait a minute, I want to see the effect that using virtual reality has on emotional and behavioral disorder students first. I didn't want to measure their gains or losses before I even knew if there was value in them using virtual reality.
Amanda, your question, it's due next Tuesday, I believe. That's when it should be. I'll have to double check, because we gave things and the people didn't get in there and change these things around. But I believe it's next Tuesday. But let me put it this way. Again, I think with both of us, if you do need maybe a day or two more, because after Monday night, you get a little bit more insight into this, that's okay. All right? Yeah. We're pretty open with this. I'm more concerned that you're understanding this as opposed to deadlines per se. Now, at times you got to have deadlines done. We know that, but this is this is an interesting activity, because it really gets into that source issue again. Your source of leadership. Well, now you're finding out your source as a researcher. Again, as you think about this, over the next couple of days, just fire questions at us. And then those of you who are still in for my class, and I think Lawrence, hopefully, this is what we're going to be doing Friday night, working in groups. So if you do have questions about this at any time, let me know.
So then real quick, when we turn this in, is this like just a couple sentences under each one? Okay.
Yeah, that's basically it. You know, you might want to put a little bit more in if you feel like it, but that's okay, because that's going to help us to say, okay, then we can start diving a little deeper into your thought process. Also share it with your colleagues within your teams. And Lawrence, I'll find out what team you'll be in the other class. That way we want you to talk with each other about this, because that's how we're going to do it.
Roger, thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay?
Because the members of your team, their ideas may change your mind in one area or another. And that's okay. I mean, that's the point of it. Well, hey, what he says works out better for what I want to look into. I think I'm going to go in that direction instead of the one I thought of first, because none of us are experts.
This is your study group, basically. It helps you, that's why I said to you, you want to do the collaborative conversations every week, because the more you talk about this, the more you begin to use the language, the more you explore it and try to understand it, the better you're going to get at it. I'll tell you, it takes, you guys, when you do your dissertation, you get that done, you're still neophytes. You just will be. It's just, you're able to get through this process using that structure, which then allows you to become deeper and deeper. There's a gentleman by the name of Max Van Man, who is one of the leading thinkers in phenomenological study. He's been at this for 40 years.
Right.
He continues to keep writing and growing and designing new things. So that's the point of it, of what this is about. So, our expectation is that we want to get you grounded in the fundamentals, knowing that this is a lifelong journey if you want to become a full-time researcher. Other ones that if you're working in school districts, working in business environment, you want to understand, at least to know how to use research within your environment. That's what it's about. Okay? So we're over the hour. And again, just, as you think about, anything, let us know. We will have another one Monday night to delve into this. If you can't make it, it will be recorded. There's a very good chance it's going to be in Shindig, which is a totally different approach. It's kind of an interesting, more advanced than Zoom. So I kind of stupidly volunteered to pilot it. So you guys are the subjects.
So do we get extra credit for being
yes, right.
Actually, I think I saw him buy a lot of extra cheese at the grocery store.
Extra cheese?
Since we are mice and rats.
That's right, that's it.
Yeah.
No, but that's quantitative. That's not qualitative.
Oh. If I'm a rat and qualitative, what do I get?
Nothing. Brie. You get
Thanks
brie.
a lot.
Okay, so that's enough. Let's cut it there. Let you process this information, and then we'll see you next week again.
Are these slides going to get posted somewhere, John?
I will get these slides out to everybody tonight or by tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good night.
The researcher's stance is up there, though. Right?
Say what?
The